Ann Poss is here.
Craig Schulte is here.
Okay. Approve the consent agenda.
We're waiting for another.
Are we waiting? We're not
No.
waiting.
We're waiting for another
Oh, so- right,
assignment.
in the grand scheme of things, but not right this second.
Not right this second.
Okay.
no.
Craig, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll approve the consent agenda.
All right, I second that. Great, so then let's get right to the budget and rates. Yes? No? Okay,
Let's do that.
okay,
Moving right along.
That's pretty much what we need to do today.
okay.
So
Okay.
we'll start with the water fund. And I'm not sure how, but not recommending a rate increase again in this fund. It seems to be doing well. I think last year we had some concern because the water volume sales was down.
It was down here.
And so if that continued, then there was going to definitely need to be rate increases in the water fund. But it has not continued. They're kind of back up, not quite to where they were in 2019 this year, but pretty close.
Okay,
So financially, we're doing well. We'll just look at the, what's included in the 2022 budget expense-wise. The personnel budget is up more than the amount that we've budgeted for increases. And we know that we're going to have an employee that's new rather than an employee that's being paid a little further up the wage scale. So I think this is a conservative look at the wage side of things.
so you're saying it could be slightly less?
It could be less than that,
Okay.
yeah. The supplies and services are, again, there's more in there than we had in our last budget. The depreciation is a little bit lower as we haven't added a lot of new things to depreciate this year. And that just kind of goes down over time. Debt service is also lower, and you can kind of see the trend there over time, that's been coming down. Even after we've added new payments, and that, again, that's just what happens. Our interest payments go down over the course of most of our debt. It's structured so that it's a fixed payment every year, meaning the early payments are higher in interest and lower in principal, and the later payments are the opposite. And then we have the item called capital reserve. So there's actually, we're basically budgeting to add $40,000 to our reserves to use for, at this point, unspecified capital projects. Two potential capital projects that we have talked a little bit about. We intend to use some of our recent COVID money to fund, that's the roof replacement at the water treatment plant, and also look at replacing the filter media in the water treatment plant. So those are both funded in this budget, including the grant money that we're expecting to use on them. The revenue side of things, you can see that number at $420,000. That's what I'm expecting us to make this year in sales, basically a utility bill number. So a little bit more than we budgeted, and that's again because the water sales have come up to a rate that they were kind of close to where they were at previously. The fees amount, we do have some building projects on the horizon, so I expect to see more new construction that's going to have utility fees to pay. There is a portion of the debt payments that the water fund makes that we're using property taxes to pay, and that's for the downtown project. That's got another couple of years on it. So that's revenue that comes into the fund but is then used to make debt payments, and you'll see that on page 2 of the memo. And then there's no rate increase built into this revenue side budget, so there's enough money included in this revenue without an increase to fully fund everything that we've got included on the expense budget. That's just more of a cash flow look at things, but we also have capital budget side of things. Well, before we look at capital budget, just a quick history. We haven't increased rates in the water fund since 2018 and haven't had to. So I don't think that that's our intention to have that happen where we never increase rates, because we know that our expenses go up every year. but the water fund's been doing okay, and it's got pretty good reserves right now. And we've been planning ahead and make sure that we have enough money to make payments on some of the bigger projects that are coming up. So we'll talk about those now.
Right, and the fact that we could put away $40,000 in a reserve without
Yeah.
increasing rates is great.
And it's not just $40,000, there's even a little bit more.
Okay,
So the expense, the depreciation expense, of course, is cash that we're collecting in rates that we use to either pay for capital items or make debt payments or accumulate in our reserves. It's there to represent the fact that although we're not paying for new pipes in all the blocks, we have pipes in all the blocks, and they're going to have to be replaced eventually. So we have to make sure there's room in the budget to do that. So that cash plus the debt service money that is included in the expense budget and capital reserve, which is actually a little bit more now, gives us more money than the current debt commitment. So you can see right now the payments that we have to make are totaling $170,000. So we're going to accumulate that 35 additional plus another. It's really about 60 grand that we're going to make in cash above and beyond what we owe in debt payments. So that isn't all just planning on accumulating in the reserves over time. Like I said, we're going to spend some of it on some improvements to the treatment plant, but more importantly, it's sitting there knowing that we've got two fairly significant water and sewer projects in the near future, in the next 5 years, I'd say. One of them being the Fifth Avenue reconstruction, which the county is planning on doing in 2023, which means we'll probably have a debt payment that starts in 2024 for that project. And then the First Street reconstruction, which is a really quite significant project that we've kind of had as our next major reconstruction. And I don't really know yet when it's going to happen, but we've kind of been looking at 24 or 25 as the time when we might do it, because some of our other debt payments come off the books at that point. So water fund is in a good place right now.
okay. Does anyone, did you want to add something?
I like a little increase. I've been noticing there's a lot of unaccountable water in the upper zone, and I think the issue is up on Highway 61 on top of the hill. And if we have that repaired, it's mostly beyond our scope. So a little bit more, and I don't know if it's under the supplies or services, might have to be, thought about. I know we have it, we do have it if we need to spend it.
Yeah, I would, if we're going to spend, say, 50 grand on a repair project, that's something that will depreciate rather than expense. So right now, we're looking with reserves in about a $500,000 range in the water fund, which is, when you say, we have it, yeah, we have it to make a significant repair project where we'd have to bring in outside forces.
Yeah, emergency kind of repair project.
Could you explain what you mean by unaccounted water?
Water that we know we draw out of the lake and push into the system versus water that we run through the meters and collect money for. Leaks in the pipes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Thanks for
the
spelling
most
that out.
likely place
Okay.
it's occurring anyway. So
Okay.
Yeah, because it's been getting worse and worse, and I might have leak detection come this fall to try and trace the upper zone, because I know that's where it is, and with all the people leaving now, the water plant can handle it, it could handle it in the summer, but for some reason, there's 50,000 gallons a day that's going through that system that shouldn't be under a regular scenario.
Well, that seems like a lot. Is that
It's a lot in perspective.
Is it a major expense to get the leak people to
No,
come?
that guy's only like 2,000-3,000.
yeah, the major expenses, dealing with what they tell us
Right.
they find.
Well,
Or
maybe-
where it is the issue.
Sure.
Certain places on top of the hill, it's over 8 feet deep, it's in clay, it's under new sidewalks, and it's got lots of fiber lines in the way. And we probably have to shut down at least one lane of the highway to do it.
You're talking 7?
61.
Highway 61 on the west side.
Oh, on the west side of 60.
Hopefully, though, there's a one that's cropped up that's not there that we can do ourselves like we did the other day.
Well,
It's the logistics of where it's at and how deep it is in the surrounding structures makes it
sure.
not for our backhoe can't dig that far. Well, it can, but it'll take days.
Yeah.
And days with people without water, that's one thing that I kind of get cranky on, is I don't like to have people without water. So,
People don't like that.
That's reasonable. They don't like it either. But I mean, losing that much water too seems,
it's also a money thing.
yeah,
It's a money, well, if we spend $50,000 repairing a couple water leaks, the electricity to push that water and the chemicals up on the hill it's not like a cost end zone.
It's a lot cheaper to just dump it in the ground than to
Yes,
fight
to
it.
fix it. Until it puts stress on the water plant and you cannot keep up. And the idea of about everybody's, about water saving, around the country and world, it's not that like that here where we live. We have that lake.
You can see our water
it
every
isn't
day.
now, but,
No, but we know where the water goes, right?
right,
It goes-
Eventually, right
goes
back
back
where we
into
got
the
it.
lake.
Right,
Back into the
right.
lake.
That's what I tell like the
Right,
DNR. We
it
take
does.
100 million gallons out of the lake and the wastewater plant puts in 200 million. So we're adding to the lake every year, so. It is money. I mean, it costs a lot of money to fix a leak for what you get out of it, but there's times you have to do it. I'd like to see it, right down there, but economically and logistically, it's not always the best move.
Either way, we want to know.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna try to find out
Yeah.
where this leak is.
If there's,
And then
especially if there's ones that we can handle, we'll handle them.
What's gonna take to fix it.
Yeah, we can talk about what we have to do after we find out what the issues are.
And we're not gonna attempt fixing anything till
Not this year.
not winter time, no.
No.
Next
I mean,
summer
I guess
or-
maybe if weather's great and it's December
Yeah.
and we've got, but we know if it's not an emergency, that KGM will be back in town next spring to
Next
work on
spring,
the.
work out.
But if it's like out on 2nd Street or 8th, on top of 8th, we'll do that ourselves.
Yeah.
And we'll do that even in the winter. Sometimes they break so bad that they come flying out of the ground and they flood,
Right.
areas, and then you have to
Obviously.
fix them.
Well, and that kind of water too, if it's one break that's spilling that much water, you don't know what it's doing under the road if it's
Yeah.
close to it, so.
Yeah.
okay, anything else on the water budget? Will we move to approve all these at the end, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the sewer budget, where it looks like you are recommending a small increase.
Yeah, and then the sewer side of things, we've had regular increases. It's been a long time since we've had a year where we haven't needed an increase in the sewer budget. And the sewer fund's always been a little bit bigger, a little more expensive than the water side. And that's basically because it costs a lot more to run the treatment plant in the sewer side than it does on the water side. And until this Highway 61 project, it's always been the case that replacing water lines is significantly more expensive than replacing sewer lines because they cost more and they're deeper. But then the sewer expenses in the Highway 61 project were really, if there had been a water line along those blocks, I'm sure that would have been ridiculously expensive too, but thankfully there wasn't. But it was 5 to 10 times what the engineer's estimate was per foot to replace some of that stuff, which is really, hopefully that's a one-time thing, but it kind of puts a hit on the fund balance when you have to come up with that kind of money, $600,000-$700,000 for sewer replacements, which is one of the reasons why we've had to keep increasing this one. I think it's also just a good thing that we have to keep increasing this one. We looked at the water treatment plant and the things we might want to do to it, and they're really in the tens of thousands scale, maybe a couple $100,000 if we start thinking about some, really cool things. When we look at the sewer plant, we know it's in the millions that we're going to need to do in terms of work on that plant. We don't know exactly what the right path is yet, and we're still working through that with our engineers and with the NPCA, so I really wish we could have a more informed conversation about that, but we can't, which means we just have to be ready for something significant. And so these fund increases in rates will help us do that.
Is 3% enough? I see that it went up 5 in 2018.
Yeah, well, let's think about that
Kinda
question at
average
the end.
3.
Because there's other things other than the unknowns of the treatment plant. We have some knowns that we have to talk about too.
Okay.
So the personnel expenses are up, not quite as fast as they are on the water side, and partially that's because every year we sort of rebalance how many hours the staff spends in which side of the, based on our actual, timesheet recording. But all of the money to pay all of our staff members in the water and sewer department is in either the water or sewer
Sure.
fund. Sometimes it just moves back and forth a little bit. Supplies is a pretty known quantity, but services is trickier. So we've had a long-standing arrangement with G&G Septic to haul our biosolids down to Duluth. And they haven't increased their rates to do that hauling for a number of years. There is a fuel surcharge built in to kind of insulate them from things that happen with the fuel costs, but obviously their other costs have gone up in the meantime, and so they're talking to us, and we'll need to come, maybe even the next meeting to look at some ideas about what we need to do in terms of raising rates with G&G.
Is that included in services then?
That is the biggest chunk of services.
Okay.
About half of that money is what we spend on hauling sludge.
There's two aspects. There's the fee to get rid of it at Western Lake Sanitary District and the fee to get it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the hauling costs more than the treatment, but they're both pretty expensive.
It used to be a 3/4, 1/4, but the fees in Duluth have crept up, so it's probably 60/40 now
Yeah.
at least, so.
Okay. 2/3, 1/3, or 60/40 or somewhere in
Yeah.
there. So we know that's going to go up. I'm not sure if we've built enough into that number for it to go up, but when we talk about revenues, there's a flip side to this, and that is that we also collect fees for accepting non-residential wastewater, and the biggest customer for that is G&G Septic and their plant that they have in the business park. And we haven't raised our fees
Same
for them
amount.
over the same amount of time. And so what we've talked about is finding a way that we can increase what we're paying them to haul so that they're covering their costs on that business, and then probably looking at what we're charging them and having a similar amount of increased revenue built in. I don't know whether it'll end up being exactly the same or not, but they can turn around and charge their customers that cost because it's just part of the doing business. So, and it's only fair that those folks pay their fair share of what it costs to get their stuff into our treatment plant. Still a much better deal for everybody that they get to use that system rather than having to haul everything that they collect down to Duluth.
Yeah.
That really just makes the volume quite a bit more easier to deal with. Though hopefully that continues to work. That's been a great fit for us to do it that way. But as costs continue to go up, we have to keep thinking about, is this the right path to continue to haul significant volume of biosolids to Duluth? And not only the cost issue, but we've had volume issues at Duluth too, where they've been limiting the amount we can bring down there. And that's caused some issues with us at the plant and making us change the way we're doing things. So those sorts of things happening at the same time, it's like this is a good chance to just take a step back and reimagine if there's another way we can do this. And when we're talking about $100,000 to $150,000 a year of expenses to deal with biosolids, really allows for some pretty significant capital changes to the plant if that's what we need to do to take care of it.
Where more of it could be handled here?
Where we don't haul it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Different process. It'd be like another whole step.
Okay.
And we've done some of that. Tom's been really good in these past few years about finding ways to just reduce the volume, but the way he handles it at the plant. But that doesn't affect the Duluth side of things.
Sure.
It's not reducing the amount of the things that they track. It's just the volume, and they can handle a lot of volume, but it's the nutrients and such that that they're gonna keep us, that's gonna be the limiting factor. And we can't really do anything different about that here without making some real changes to the plan. The rest of the expense side of things, very similar. The depreciation number is pretty hefty here as well because we've just got a lot of things that we own. And then there's a debt service that's been steadily going down. So we're looking at about a $700,000 budget. The revenue side of things, you can see our 2021 budget was, we thought that this year we'd probably come in about the same as last year. That was a conservative. COVID's still happening. We know that the sales volume is down. But as you can see now, we're expecting it to be closer to 600,000 in 2021. So that's the number that's in that utility bill side on 2022, assuming that volume stays the same. And then a 3% rate increase is another $18,000 on top of that. We get some fees for development, some miscellaneous money, which is mainly interest on reserves, and then this gray water leachate sludge line item in the revenues is what we charge outside folks to take their stuff at our treatment plant. So again, if hopefully whatever we decide we have to raise the services expense side, we can also raise on the fees side of this. Because as you can see, we're basically breaking even at 700 with a 3% increase.
How does WSSD work? We pay just the hauling, or
No,
do we pay do we pay G&G for disposal of and hauling?
no, we pay two separate bills. We pay Duluth
Okay.
separately than
Okay.
G&G.
So if they raise their rates, we're
Yeah.
directly impacted right
And
away.
they base
on
their
that.
rates on strength of our product. Every
Okay.
month I have to get a sample and we send it, and that's how they bill it.
Okay.
They bill us on the total suspended solids and the BOD loading in volume.
By the gallon or?
Well, it's by the pound of the two
Weight?
products, the weight, and then the gallons, the volume is by.
Okay.
And G&G's is straight by the gallon and a fuel surcharge.
Haul costs, yeah.
So on the sewer side of things, we have depreciation and debt service is the only money on the budget that's being set aside for working on capital projects. It's not quite as much as we've got on the water side of things, but the debt payments are not as much either. So we're basically making these two current debt payments. One is the 2013 refunding is basically all of the replacement projects we've done in the past 20 years that we're still making debt payments on. They've all just been combined over a series of refunding to get great interest rates. And then the 2017 CIP is the sewer department's share of the public works facility, so that one will be there for a while. But we're looking at about $116,000 in payments versus $173,000 of available cash. So we're planning on this 56,000 number accumulating in our reserves and eventually being used for future debt payments. So when we talk about those two big projects on the water side, Fifth Avenue and First Street, well, Fifth Avenue is a big sewer, or bigger water than sewer project, but there are some sewer lines in there as well, in most of those blocks, I think.
The
Second to Fifth, anyway, there's got to be some, right?
Yeah, well, the sewer going up Fifth will now to be done, but they're in sections.
Yeah.
There's three different sections where it ties into a trunk that goes east-west instead of north-south, so, you know, the sewer part of that project is a lot less than the water. Actually,
Probably, yeah. And, you know, if it's a couple 100,000 even, it would be nice to see that.
Yeah,
First Street's a different story. You know, we don't know how many blocks we're going to end up doing yet, but it could be anywhere from 8 to 15 blocks that are all going to have sewer mains in them. So what if this is a $3 million project and, you know, the sewer fund is paying for $750,000 of it, something like that. That's kind of the ballpark of what that project might look like. And so at that level, that 56,000 will disappear to pay for that project, and we'll probably need some more. And some of that will come from, some of that refunding bond money will disappear as well in 2024. We won't be making most of that 81,000 payment anymore, which is good. Then we can use that to
Right.
step in and pay for the First Street project. But if we have to spend $5 million on the wastewater treatment plant, we're not even scratching the surface on that with the money that we've got here. So we're not intending to enter into a project where we've got to spend that much money without getting some help from somewhere else. That's a big part of our strategy. But we do know that regardless of what happens with our conversations with the NPCA, that there's some needs in our wastewater treatment plant, just some real basic stuff that we may decide we have to get on before that's resolved, all the way up into maybe some significant structural changes to the building and the treatment systems. So that'll be an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
And I just don't see where, it's a 3% increase, that's only $18,000. If we made it a 6% increase, that extra 18 is still not really going to solve the wastewater treatment plant issue. So that's why I wouldn't necessarily look at increasing the rates even more. I think with the sewer, we need to make sure that we keep increasing them every year, and that we know that there's room for some additional payments, but I don't think it's right for us to charge all the customers today, a made-up amount to pay for a project that we haven't scoped out. We
Right.
don't really know how we're going to do it yet.
Okay. Any other, do you have anything else to add?
No, that's pretty good. Mike's doing real good about it.
Okay. Craig, do you have anything? Okay.
No.
Tom's got me trained in now. It's only
Oh.
taken a couple decades.
Okay, then we'll move to the electric fund.
Electric fund. Boy, we're so lucky to have an electric utility. It's, I look at the news and I see that Excel wants to do a huge increase, and Great River Energy and Minnesota Power both want to do huge increases. And, their biggest reasons for doing that is they've had a lot of basically paid for coal plants that aren't financially feasible anymore, and they need to replace them. And the stuff they're going to replace them with, they're going from not paying for things to having to pay for a lot of new stuff. And it's great that we're moving that direction in terms of the sources of our energy, and the externalities are being dealt with by the power companies. But it's going to be expensive for them. I look at Simpa, and we're in very similar situation. A lot of our power is produced by coal right now, less than it has been in the past, because the coal plants just don't run as much as they used to, based on how expensive it is. But by 2030, we're thinking we probably won't have a coal plant, and we've been now working on where we're going to get new sources of energy on the Simpa side of things for a while. And even looking at that, really good analysis of where the next 10 years of where we're going to be getting our power from, what it might cost. We haven't had a rate increase from Simpa for a couple of years. We won't be having one in 2022. As a matter of fact, we'll be receiving a rebate from Simpa of over $90,000 in 2022. And that's in lieu of getting a rate decrease, just because they're also a bunch of very conservative planners. It's basically 18 utility managers trying to, none of them want to do rate decreases.
Right.
Just because we don't want to have to increase them again when things go up. It's better to have that smooth line rather than the up and down.
Right.
That's half the good news. We'll look at the expense budget, and then we can talk about the rest. So of course, there's a big change in the 2022 expense budget in terms of the personnel side of things, because we'll be adding that third full-time position in the line department of an apprentice that will start paying a little bit maybe in '21, but we'll have the whole cost of it in 2022.
And has that individual been hired?
He's hired, but we haven't replaced him yet, so he hasn't really started.
Okay.
And we're working on that. So hopefully that'll happen soon as well. The supplies, you can see those numbers have gotten kind of big in 19 and 20, because we've been doing a lot of pretty good-sized projects on our system as well. Some of it to do with the Highway 61 project, some of it to do with upgrades on some of our lines that were kind of outside the periphery. So a lot of that supplies and services budget ends up paying for projects like that where we have to buy wire and transformers and other things. I don't think that we're looking at 2022 as another big year of that. We're really running out of stuff to replace because the system's in very good shape. The whole thing was reconstructed, basically within the last 15 years. So we probably have another good 15 years before we really have to worry too much about our distribution system. The purchase power number is tricky. You look at the 2020 actual, and it's way down from 2019 actual. And part of that is just because, SIMPA hasn't increased their rates, and part of it is because our 2020 sales were about 10% down from where they were in 2019. And in 21, they're up from there, but not a lot. We're not back to exactly where we were. It's kind of the same with water sales. I think water came up more than electricity did. And yet, even at slightly less sales or even 10% less sales, the fund it is in a position where it produces financially very well. There's not a lot of miscellaneous in there. The depreciation side is pretty large, and that again is the fact that we replaced the system within 15 years, so basically the entire distribution system is still being depreciated. The power plant is also still being depreciated, although it's just about done now. Our debt service number is really coming down there as well. There's 2 debt payments that we'll look at on the other side of things. There's a staffing reserve that we had built into 2021 budget, was mainly there for the idea that we were going to add an apprentice. Mm-hmm. And we did, and that used it all up. And yet we're going to put some more in it because not sure we're done thinking about staffing yet on the utility, particularly on the administrative side of things. The line department does not have a supervisor. They've got 2 journeyman line workers and an apprentice. And we haven't replaced the electric superintendent. And the electric superintendent, really, we want that person to do some department head and management level things, but we also need them to be a line worker. And the fact that we've got an apprentice is going to alleviate some of that need for that 3rd line worker. And in 5 years, we won't have that need because they'll also be a journeyman line worker. And in the meantime, the staff that we have is really capable of functioning without daily supervision. And we've been able to fill in some of the blanks in the administrative side of things with taking care of department head stuff, and the line workers have stepped up and done some of those things on their own. So I think this is still a sustainable model, but everything feels a little thin when it comes to staffing these days. So there's room in this budget to think about spending more on staff. We're going to leave that in there. And then this capital reserve item, it's basically, again, just an idea that we're going to put more money into the reserves than we're planning on spending this year. So that is the expense side of things. Before we look at revenues, one place we've talked about now for a few years running, changing the expense side of things, is the facility or the franchise fee that the electric fund pays to the general fund. Municipal utilities generally make some sort of transfer payment like this, whether they call it a franchise fee or whether they call it a payment in lieu of taxes, but it's a standard thing. The amount that we're paying now is about half of what bonding agencies have said would be a triggering point for them before they'd start to be worried about it.
Okay.
So we could increase that transfer fee without having any adverse impacts on our electric fund, both financially and also when we're looking at getting rated for bond sales, which I don't think we're looking at for the foreseeable future anyway. Mm-hmm. So utility bills, the 2020 actual, even though we were down 10%, came in with enough money to, you can see we made $2.86 million and we spent 2.5. So, take that 250 or so thousand in capital reserve and staffing reserve that doesn't show up on the 2020 actual and put it back in there, And we still have another 100,000 in revenues that we made in 2020, even in a down year. So the fact is that it's just a performing fund right now, and it doesn't need a rate increase. And it won't probably for at least a few more years. 2022 budget, we know that our electricity sales are going to be up again, higher than we thought they would be this year, for sure, and higher than they actually were in 2020, but maybe not quite as high as they were in 18 and 19. So we're still sort of down in that 5 to 10% lower electricity sales. The capital side of things, there's a lot of money built into this budget to make capital payments. The depreciation number, the debt service number, the capital reserve, it's close to $500,000. The debt payments are also close to $500,000 today, but the power plant refunding bond will be done paying in 2 years, and the reconstruction refunding bond will be done in 3 years, I think. So, I mean, basically, these are coming off the books to the tune of over $300,000 a year of debt payments. So, right now, we've got an extra 55 that is built into this budget that's accumulating in the reserves, built into the budget. But even last year, we outperformed that by $100,000. So the revenue is accumulating as reserves, which is good. So we recently did a rate study. We had a professional come in and help us think about what our rates ought to be. And one of the factors was future staffing needs. One of the factors was our debt payments are going to disappear and we don't have any major capital improvements that we need to do. And his advice was still, you need your reserves to get higher. That, even though they're pretty big right now for a utility your size, you should have more. And so our strategy, even though we're not increasing rates, is we want that extra revenue to come and accumulate in our reserves. So I guess the idea is when there are things that happen in the electric fund, they might cost a lot of money, and
Right.
it's nice to have it there waiting for us. What else are we going to do on the capital side in the electric fund?
Well, I had a question about that, and maybe it wouldn't come out of this fund exactly, but what happened to the discussions of expanding the city-owned solar array?
We did expand
Okay.
it.
But weren't we discussing doing it further?
I don't think we were. So we have to work through SIMPA.
Right.
And they'll only purchase a certain amount from us with favorable rates.
Okay.
And we've used up all of that.
Okay.
So if we were going to build any more, it would be at they'd pay us what they could get it for on the market, which is significantly less than it's going to cost us to build it.
Okay, so we've kind of used up that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, I also think we're not particularly pleased being owners of these things. They're a pain, and they're difficult to keep maintained, and we're having a hard time getting parts and keeping local staff that knows how to do the maintenance and has time to do the maintenance. I looked to the 10 or so solar installations we've got in town, and there's going to be another, who knows, 5 to 10 a year. It kind of looks like people adding them, and I think, I hope you know what you're signing yourself up for.
Right.
I mean, it's great to have this solar, and the idea of it being free power and clean power is great, but it comes with some responsibilities, and even with a well-funded, staffed operation, it's a lot to deal with. So I don't know if we want to do more ourselves. That doesn't mean we wouldn't invest in more solar.
Right.
But I think we'd want to do it as a part of a utility scale project where someone else is dealing with those problems, and it's a big enough project where they've got the capabilities to do it a little bit easier than we
Right.
do.
And I think CCLEP is trying to recruit people to get that training, and, is trying to help people become technicians, or whatever the word is,
Yeah,
on this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we recognize that as an area that needs improvement here, if this is gonna be the way we wanna move as a community. These days, the idea of taking any area and being able to build your staffing capacity seems kinda silly. So,
Right.
maintaining would be great, the building would be outstanding, I don't know, we'll see.
Right.
We'll see. So really the power plant, we built it in 2003. And it's not a plant that runs a lot, right? It's basically a capacity plant, meaning it's something that the grid can count on being available when needed. But we run it dozens of hours a year, not even hundreds of hours a year. Is good, means probably is good to stay there in mostly its current form for a long time still, before we have to make hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars of investment in it. In the meantime, SIMPA's still saying that those types of plants are an important part of their future, which means if you look at our revenue categories, one of them is SIMPA payments. $216,000 is the capacity payment that we receive annually from SIMPA for having that plant. They also pay then for any fuel that it uses. So sometimes you can see that number goes up quite a bit, where SIMPA is paying for some of the operating costs as well. Well, that 216 used to be awfully close to what the debt payments were, and today, after we've gotten better interest rates on the payments twice in its 20-year life, it's not, we're making money on that. And SIMPA says they're going to keep paying this at least for the foreseeable, and that debt payment's going to go away in 2 years, which means it's a great investment to have that plant.
Right.
But is it the plant that we want? Is there some other things we can do with it? Does it need to have some improvements made to it? We've talked about, do we want to do some sort of battery storage project someday or something kind of cool like that? I mean, I don't know. This is all pie in the sky and future stuff. I think maybe more realistic is the need to make some investment in our substation, because that's it's got one big transformer, right, that you can't really just go buy at the hardware store. The lead time on those was a long time, the last time we had a person look at it, and that was before COVID pandemic. So I wouldn't even want to imagine what the lead time is on it now. When we had somebody look at it, part of what they were trying to do with us was sell us an insurance package on it. And basically, we're self-insured on this, right? If we need to replace it, we've got the cash now to buy a new one, and the cash to pay somebody to come up here with this temporary one and run a temporary substation for us.
Okay.
But there's maybe some opportunities there to look at making improvements to the substation, or replacing some of the pieces in it, or that. This is really maybe one of the areas where not having a department head gives us our biggest problem, because we don't have anybody whose job it is to literally sit down and think about this stuff. And we all do it anyway, right? The staff are thinking about it, they're working with it, we think about it, but none of us have a lot of time to do it. So we've got the money to work on it, we just don't have the time to plan a project.
Okay.
So 3% sewer increase is what I'm recommending. Tom might want a little water increase too.
Does anybody else have any comments? Or Craig, do you want to make a motion to accept that increase?
You had no increase for that. I'll make a motion to accept this as it's written. So we had no increase.
030.
030, yep. Basically, zero increase on water, zero increase on electricity, and a 3% increase on sewer.
Okay. I second that. So we don't have to vote since we already made the motions.
Great,
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a, what would the word be? Outreach in place for looking for citizens for this commission? Do you want us to put the word out as well? How do you?
Yes and yes.
Okay,
I mean, occasionally a random person shows up and expresses interest is really the best strategy we've got right now, which is too bad.
yeah,
I think the word is out there.
okay,
In everything that Patrick's got that he sends out to folks that mentions it.
yep,
It's mentioned at meetings fairly regularly, and then also at the radio station where we talk about the meetings fairly regularly.
right,
But I still think that the most effective way is for someone such as yourselves or an elected official to actually personally ask someone to do it. And you know, the first 10 you try are going to say no. So keep it up.
Yeah.
right,
And this is an important job, and it'd be a shame to think that we can't fill these boards. I mean, the fact is that the organization can function without them, but it's better with them, particularly if there's capable and interested people on them. So if we can't fill these spots, then I think as an organization, as a city, we're going to have to decide pretty soon. Do we need to shrink a little bit? Do we need to get less boards? I mean, some of these boards we have to have. Right now, we have to have a utilities commission. I mean,
Right.
the way we're organized, we need one. Right, we have to have a planning commission. But we've got openings on every board.
All three of them, Park Board, too.
Park Board too, yeah. So,
Okay.
and I don't think this is a local phenomenon.
no,
And I look around at other particularly elected boards and look at all the abuse that people have had to take to try to do those jobs lately and wonder why anybody'd want to sign up for it. There's a reason, because somebody's got to do that work.
right,
Otherwise, what are we doing here?
right. Okay,
We'll keep looking,
yep. Same.
keep asking.
Anything else? Anybody have anything else?
I don't have anything else. So.
Okay.
Oh, there's a cut across top of 8th Avenue for a water supply.
Mhm.
Is that probably not going to get blacktopped, is it? I didn't think so.
No, and that's actually
We
the
just missed-
homeowner's responsibility to
We
take
just-
care of.
Oh, we just missed that window. Oh, I mean, I'm
And
just
it's,
saying, we just
It's a
kinda
county
missed
road too.
It's a county
Like, They need
road.
a permit from the county.
They had
to
a
do
county
that.
permit to do it, so
Yeah.
Well,
the
did
county's
they-
the bulldog on that.
Or did they have to get a permit to
Yes.
to cut?
Yep.
And that was issued by the county?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So that's the county is
The county has to be the bulldog on them to get it done.
to get it, okay.
I mean, that's their road. They need
There's
to
signs
have-
there now that says bump and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, so I just
Yeah.
noticed that today.
It's not great timing.
No, it was just,
It's nice to see more housing.
But I
get
did
built.
see new blacktop, right after they did that, I saw a new blacktop put down.
It was before.
Just before that, like the week before.
Down at the North House, they did that
Oh.
slope, and they did that at 4 o'clock at night.
No, but there was some, did we do that street?
That was
A
done
block
before.
up? Oh, it was done before, okay. I know I saw some that was just like a week before, that's too bad.
Yeah.
It is.
And a big thing they couldn't do it in the summer was because of the detour in the trucks.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
They put in for the permit,
Sure.
and I told them you aren't gonna get it
They
because,
held off on it?
yeah, county held off. They were released. They did that. I mean,
Yep.
I would've been shocked if they let them close that road down, but that's the only way into town, you
It had
know?
been done fast,
Right.
And-
Yeah.
in the evening, late at night.
Mhm.
Okay, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Anything else?
Well, we've got one more meeting where we have 2 people on the board. And like I said,
We need another person.
we'll probably be coming to that agenda to talk about the G&G septic relationship and those
Okay.
2 rates.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Actually, yeah,
because I don't want to have to wait, you know, if you've left and we haven't replaced you and we can't have another PUC meeting for a while, we'll get by because this is important, but that's
Right.
something that we really don't want to have to wait on either, so.
Sure.
Then we
Hopefully
need to
can get that all done
reapprove
in
the,
December and,
we gotta reapprove the contract
yeah.
that they have with us.
Okay.
The state has been asking for a couple of years. All you gotta do is reread it and re-agree to it, but they just need it noted. But there's, going back then about the thing, we charge right now 3 different rates for 3 different products. And they're all hauled in by G&G. One is billed separately, or one line item is billed to different companies directly. He's pulling water out of the Taconite Harbor area in 2 different places for 2 different owners, and that's the leachate. That's just pretty much clear water, but they can't discharge it. And that's one fee we charge for that, because there's virtually nothing in it. Then through G&G that he hauls in, that we charge them directly and he back bills to his other customers, is septage, like solids, and then like holding tank gray water, which someone that they don't have a drain field, they just have a septic tank, a holding tank, because they're different strengths. But then I was just making notes. One thing that we'll try and, I think, work on is maybe a 4th rate, or even, well, we can only do a 4th rate because the other one will be in town. We have to negotiate or watch and do some analyzing of it, is the brewery and what their solid loading, content is to the plant. I know a lot of towns have really went after the breweries and made them pay for upgrades and everything else on their plants because they're causing all the damage and the problems. But like for the G&G, because lots of it is stuff he does at some of these large commercial facilities, I think we need to still keep our leachate, our gray water, a household domestic septage rate, and a commercial septage rate, because it's even thicker and heavier, and some of it border on what the state would, or even Duluth would see hazardous waste where we're not supposed to take it at all. The pH and different aspects to it that comes in. So I think, and to be fair to the residential people in the county versus the big commercial places, I think we might have to set 4 different rates as an idea to think about. So. Don't like that idea?
No, I love that idea, and I'm just thinking about the commercial laundry facility that's located in the business park. They don't have to worry about this, right? Because
yeah, they're ours.
They're on our system.
Yeah.
But had they not been on our
Not been on our
system, they would have had to spend a significant amount of money on their own septic site, and then
$500,000 they told me, that guy.
and then they
Really?
still have to think about this problem,
Wow.
which is if it comes in too strong, we're going to charge
Yeah.
them more for it. So, good choice,
Like the
guys.
winery's tough
Yeah.
on our plant.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah, actually, most of the summer I rejected it. I didn't want to take it because we were having issues anyway. The spring of the year, I rejected all these big holding tanks from like most of the West End resorts because it was too damaging. It was sucking too much oxygen too fast out of our system, and it was hard to keep up. So I took winery the other day because they're doing pH control, because they took a load to Duluth, and Duluth tested and said, you guys are borderline hazardous waste and we're not going to take you either. So that's part of their business. They got to deal with that if they want us to take it or not. So that's why we do need to look at a commercial septic kind of rate for those people.
Yeah, and it's not even, there could even be a different word than commercial, because there's plenty of commercial organizations that don't create that kind of stuff, right?
I don't know about out in the county.
You're talking county.
Yeah, this is everything in the city don't matter.
Yeah,
The only thing in the city we have to watch and we have to do some analyzing and getting samples is the brewery.
yeah.
See a volume and stuff like that. So. But the county, yeah, like the big resorts, like even Cascade, he pumps those tanks all the time, and the Lutz Resort tanks, it's just. And like he used to do Wolf Ridge, and I'm not gonna. I'd say you can't do Wolf Ridge. It's just too much. Too much at one time is the biggest thing, and they need to get their job done so they can pay for it to go to Duluth.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Possibilities.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
And I'm 64.
What?
I'm 64. I'll be 65
Today?
in a year. No,
You got-
about a week
you got
ago.
10 years
Oh,
left.
happy
Yeah.
birthday.